Welcome to this week's edition of The Truth. I'm John Gordon. We've got a very good show lined up for you today. We're going to start off with the conversation around Epstein. It's a story that, unlike him, just will not die. That's probably pretty poor form, isn't it? I don't know that that came out quite the way I intended it, but the story won't go away. And there are a lot of reasons that I believe why the story is continuing to rage on. Let's start with what Kash Patel said before he became Attorney General. And then we will look at what he said post being, Director of the FBI. And then we'll look at what he said after becoming the Director of the FBI. Roll tape one.
Why is the FBI protecting the greatest pederast, the largest scale pederast in human history?
Simple, because of who's on that list. You don't think that Bill Gates is lobbying Congress night and day to prevent the disclosure of that list? And why is it that the Senate, and good for Senator Blackburn to try to get it out, but then Dick Durbin comes over the top and says, no, we're not going to release the names. I don't care about the list itself, but if you release the names, right?
And I've said it, Dan Bongino said it, we've reviewed all the information and the American public is going to get as much as we can release. He killed himself.
As much as we can release. Well, why can't you release everything you've got is the question that I would ask. Pam Bondi said that she would. Here she was just a few weeks ago.
Releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
Oh my gosh. I can say, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. They promised they were going to give it to us and they haven't. Oh my gosh. And now they've given us some videos of Epstein's jail, his prison cell. And according to Wired, which hired a forensic video expert, the video has been tampered with. Now, in all fairness, they don't know whether it is just because it's been converted from the file format that was on the Department of Corrections video as opposed to an MP3 file. But there is evidence of significant starting and stopping and I don't know the right adjective to use. I'm trying to find the quote from this report. Also, mysteriously, 1 minute is missing. Do you remember the famous Watergate recordings that had a 13-minute gap? Sounds kind of familiar. Something else that brought back memories of Watergate to me was this exchange that happened in the White House earlier this week in a cabinet meeting that the press was invited into.
Ask the Attorney General a question too, President Trump. Sure. Your memo and release yesterday on Jeffrey Epstein, it left some lingering mysteries. One of the biggest ones is whether he ever worked for a American or foreign intelligence agency. The former Labor Secretary, who was Miami U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta, he allegedly said that he did work for an intelligence agency. So could you resolve whether or not he did? And also, could you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape on the night of his death?
Yeah, sure. If
Pam, could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time, and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this, where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration.
That brought back memories of the past to me. Let's roll the tape from, let's see here, 50 years ago.
It is essential that in reacting to the excesses of others, we not fall into excesses ourselves. It is also essential that we not be so distracted by events such as this that we neglect the vital work before us, before this nation, before America, at a time of critical importance to America and the world. Since March, when I first learned that the Watergate affair might in fact be far more serious than I had been led to believe, it has claimed far too much of my time and my attention. Whatever may now transpire in the case, whatever the actions of the grand jury, whatever the outcome of any eventual trials, I must now turn my full attention, and I shall do so once again, to the larger duties of this office.
All right, so how did that work out? So I think that President Trump's trying to pivot and gloss over this is not going to be a good strategy for him. It's not in the best interest of the country, and I'll tell you why in just a minute. But the reporter, central to his question was, why is there a missing minute? Now you judge for yourself Pam Bondi's response to the question.
But you go ahead.
Sure. First, to back up on that, in February, I did an interview on Fox, and it's been getting a lot of attention because I said, I was asked a question about the client list, and my response was, it's sitting on my desk to be reviewed, meaning the file along with the JFK, MLK files as well. That's what I meant by that. Also, to the tens of thousands of video, they turned out to be child porn downloaded by that disgusting Jeffrey Epstein. Child porn is what they were. Never going to be released, never going to see the light of day. To him being an agent, I have no knowledge about that. We can get back to you on that. And the minute missing from the video, we released the video showing definitively the video was not conclusive, but the evidence prior to it was showing he committed suicide. And what was on that, there was a minute that was off the counter. And what we learned from Bureau of Prisons was every night, they redo that video. It's old, from like 1999. So every night the video is reset, and every night should have the same minute missing. So we're looking for that video to release that as well, showing that a minute is missing every night. And that's it on Epstein.
I think it's a low point in President Trump's second administration. I don't think that it's going to cause the end of the second term. I sure as heck hope not. But I think the way they are dealing with it is really second rate. You can't say, that missing minute was just a glitch in the system, and every night the Bureau of Prisons cameras shut down for a minute. What? It doesn't ring true. Just like, well, Epstein's prison mate was transferred out of the jail, out of the cell a week earlier. Just like, the guards were asleep. I mean, it just goes on, and it's not working. The American people are not going to buy it, and there's a very good reason why the people are not going to buy it. And what we heard from Pam Bondi was Jen Psaki jumping into her body during the cabinet meeting, just like Whoopi Goldberg did in the movie Ghost when she jumped into the body. You remember that very iconic scene? Because Pam Bondi is going to circle back around. We're going to get back to you on whether Epstein was an agent working for the CIA. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why this story is not going to go away, nor should it. Now, look, I don't really care about the list. A lot of people are going to object to this. I'm sorry. This is just my state of mind. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure I am in many people's eyes, but I do not care about the list. I think publishing the list has the risk of endangering potentially innocent people. I don't know. I have no earthly idea who is on the list. It's all supposition. And I think that what they did was wrong and they should be punished. But who on that list had sex with women of age? And who on that list had sex with underage women? And who is to say when a female becomes of age? In the great state of Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, it's 18. In some states, it is 17. So I know that the young lady that tragically lost her life, took her life in Australia 2 weeks ago, was 17 when she had sex with Prince Andrew, allegedly. So was she of age or wasn't she? I mean, they said that she was underage. Well, I frankly don't know where to draw that line. And was she 17 in a day, or was she 17 in 364 days? I mean, I just think it becomes very murky at that point, and I'm not willing to ruin the lives of people who in some ways are victims themselves. What? Stop throwing stuff at the radio. It's not becoming to you. What I'm saying is if they got sucked into this, if they were invited on the Lolita Express to go to Epstein Island and they thought they were going to go down there to drink beer and play golf and volleyball, and then these attractive young ladies show up on the scene and they have a couple of pops, and next thing you know, they're behind closed doors, and unbeknownst to them, video cameras are recording it all. Is that person evil, or did they fall for a guise that they did not detect? I don't know. I know I'm on very thin ice with hot skates at this point, making this argument. But I just don't know who might be swept up in this net if the list, whatever the list is released, and whether everybody on the list is guilty, whether there were some people on the list who may have had consensual sex, legitimately consensual, and how many people were having sex with underage girls. And I think there, the ability to excuse someone becomes zero. I mean, I remember when I was a young person and as an adolescent in high school and in college, I liked the girls very much. But I also vividly remember knowing that I would never hold hands or kiss a girl if she was underage. It's just something that you knew instinctively and intuitively that was not acceptable behavior, period, paragraph. No further explanation required. You just don't cross that line because someone that is below the age of consent is considered to be a vulnerable person who does not have the ability or the judgment to prevent the aggressor. It's just that simple. So it's a hard line and you do not cross it. Even if they tell you that they're 22 and they're only 16, maybe they look 22. Maybe they could pass for 22. I mean, there are a lot of 18-year-olds right now in Athens, Georgia that go to the bar with fake IDs. I would imagine that most every female in Athens, Georgia, I bet you the majority of females in Athens, Georgia have a fake ID that says that they're 21, but they're really 18 or 19. I just bet you. Okay, so the law does not accept that as an excuse. You cannot, under any circumstances, engage in a sexual act with someone that is below the age of consent. But again, the line gets blurry. And whose law governs? What if the girl is from a state where the age of consent is 17? What if the trip was arranged in a state where the age of consent is 18? And what if the offense occurred in a nation that is not part of the United States where they have no age of consent? Or maybe it's 15 or 16. That's where it becomes very murky. And I'm not trying to waffle or walk a jagged line. I'm just being real. That to put a long list of people out there without knowing what their degree of complicity is, I think is reckless. Maybe that's what this is about. But I think it goes far deeper than that, and I'll wrap it up right after we listen to Alan Dershowitz. This is what he said Thursday evening, and I think it's very telling.
Remember, I was accused falsely in the Epstein, and ultimately I was completely cleared. The woman admitted that she may have mistook me for somebody else and withdrew all of her lawsuits. And so from day one, from the day I was accused, I said I want every document out because I knew every document would prove I was innocent. So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God, I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them, and that's wrong.
So, Mr. Dershowitz and I don't see exactly eye to eye on this. I am not really in favor of publishing the list for all the reasons that I gave you. And we don't really even know how someone gets on the list. Maybe they were invited to Epstein Island, and what if they didn't make the airplane? What if they didn't show up? How many lives are we willing to wreck, and how many marriages and how many families are we willing to rip apart when really, in my view, it is none of our business, except, and it's a big exception, where the individual engaged in sexual activities with a minor and they knew or should have known. Then you don't get a hall pass. Otherwise, unless there is an allegation of rape, which is a different story, and there have been allegations of rape, and those people should be punished, or at least they have an opportunity to defend themselves. But if proven guilty, part of the punishment is public humiliation. I'm sorry. That is a violation of the law in every state and in every Orthodox, I believe. So with those exceptions, I'm not in favor of releasing the list. But here is what I am in favor of. This is why this story won't go away. This is why I am on the trail. And if you listen, the reporter stated that Alex Costa, the U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Florida, was asked when he was being questioned before a Senate committee for confirmation in a Senate hearing for a federal office that required Senate confirmation. They asked him, why did you go light on Epstein? And he said, I was instructed to because he was an agent of the intelligence community. Did you hear that? And what did Pam Bondi say? We'll get back to you on that. You're telling me that they're going into this cabinet meeting knowing that Epstein is at the top story of every news outlet's newspaper, radio, and television broadcast. It's the lead story, and you haven't contemplated that question is going to come up? Because it's been out there now for years. Literally for years. And you're going to tell us we'll have to get back to you on that? To me, that's another way of saying, yeah, he was. Because otherwise, the simple answer would have been, no, he was not. Very simple. But we're going to get back to you. No need. Don't bother. Don't call. I don't need you to get back to me. You answered the question. That's why this story will not go away. And that's why it shouldn't go away. Because this federal government is rotten to its core. It is morally deficient and decrepit. Not the whole government, just the people that are doing these things. They create a honeypot so they lure the person of notoriety and power into a setting where they are videoed in a compromising position that the person filming created. It was staged. It was planned. It was intentional. They call it a honeypot. And it's wrong. It is a violation of our federal laws. It is a violation of human decency. It should not be allowed to occur. But it does. It did. And that's what this is all about, I think. You don't have to show us pictures, Ms. Bondi. You don't have to cover anything up because you don't want to show us videos of people having sex with minors. We're not asking for that. If you have the names of those people, we do want those names. We do want those names of the people that you have hard proof have sexually assaulted a child. You're the Attorney General of the United States, for God's sakes. What are you going to do with this information? What are you going to do with it? Just sit on it, bury it, not talk about it, change the subject, pivot, obscurate. The American people are smarter than that. And Mr. President, Nixon tried to pivot and say we've got more important things to talk about. It did not work out so well for him. Do not allow this horrible part of our nation's history to destroy your administration. And the way that you're dealing with it is not working for me, and I don't think it's working for anybody. I don't really blame you. I think you inherited it. I think it's been dumped in your lap. And I think that for Elon Musk to make a spurious false allegation about you was just wrong. I'm sure you're reeling from this as much as the rest of us are, but the truth shall set us free. We want the truth. And yes, we can handle the truth. Give it to us. And if you want to redact the names of the people on the list, it's okay with me. I just want to get to the bottom of it. Was Epstein working for our federal government? Or was he working for the Israeli intelligence? Or was he working for England's intelligence agency? Just tell us. But it must be so damning that you don't think that we can survive it. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't want to ruin our country and our system of government over it. But I think the people that are orchestrating this stuff are well on their way to ruining our democracy and our republic, because people are genuinely upset about it, and rightfully so. So give us the truth, Mr. President. Figure it out. Figure out a way. Get these good people that you've surrounded yourself with to help unravel this riddle and the mystery. Well, we reported to you last Saturday that the Georgia GOP was in turmoil because they had lost perhaps its largest funder. A very politically active family had closed its business on without notice very suddenly the middle of last week. I called during that broadcast for an investigation by some entity that could come in and look at the Georgia GOP and figure out what actually is going on there. And I guess without knowingly doing so, I was prophetic because they didn't need to show up. They were already there. The SEC is in Georgia looking at Georgia First Liberty, which has closed its doors. The entire Frost family that own First Liberty have been political activists. I've been very candid that I know them all. I know them personally. I actually like them. Brant the Fifth is not my favorite for reasons that I shared with you last week and that I've shared on with our friends at CDM Press. But the feds have come and they have alleged a Ponzi scheme that has ripped off 300 investors and to the tune of $140 million. And the issue here is that Georgia First Liberty was so tightly enmeshed with the Georgia Republican Party. And I know for a fact that when my name was being circulated to run for chairman of the party, I had a conversation with Brant the Fourth, and he told me point in no uncertain terms, don't run, that he was solidly behind Josh McCoon. So what's it all about? How far do the tentacles go? There are a lot of questions about the Georgia GOP and the Georgia GOP Inc. that have not been explained. And does this do these wrongdoings spill over into the Georgia GOP? I'm not alleging that they do. I'm asking the question. I think it's a fair question to ask. Josh McCoon said that the Georgia GOP had no investments with First Liberty. I would ask, how about you? Were you an investor in Georgia First Liberty? What is or was your relationship with Georgia First Liberty? And who else on the state executive committee had a business relationship with Georgia First Liberty? These are questions that deserve to be asked and demand a response. We know that the Georgia GOP didn't invest with First Liberty. If they did, I mean, that would imply that the Georgia GOP is investing its money with somebody. If they didn't invest with Georgia First Liberty, are you saying, no, we invested with somebody else? Is that an appropriate use of funds donated to you to be used in campaigns to recruit, train, and help elect Republicans to public office? I mean, if I were the chairman of the party, I would have said the Georgia GOP had no entanglement with the Frost family, that there were no conflicts of interest with the Frost family. That's the question that people are asking, not whether the Georgia GOP had an investment with Georgia First Liberty. That's what we call a red herring, folks. Look over here so you won't look over there. All right, well, we will learn more in the days and weeks to come. And I just, you know, this was like pouring gasoline on an already raging fire. The grassroots of the Georgia GOP feel very abused and disenfranchised. And the inner circle, the leadership are determined to cling to power at the exclusion of everyone else. And they're playing their little petty political games, blocking microphones, excluding people from being able to speak, not following the rules that govern the convention, not being transparent with the expenditures of the Georgia GOP, and not clarifying the relationship with the Georgia GOP, Inc. So it's just another chapter in the history of a political party in chaos. Mark my word, if the adults don't show up, we will have hell to pay in 2026. And it is a blink of an eye away. Donald J. Trump is remaking the U.S. economy. I have every reason to believe. Tariffs, the big beautiful bill, tax relief. He wants lower interest rates. The Trump economy is starting to ignite. We can see it. So the big beautiful bill had the effect, has not had long enough time to have an effect on, in a direct way, how consumers act and behave. But consumer confidence is what really drives our economy. The consumer makes up 75% of our economy. And so when the consumer is optimistic and they spend, the whole tide rises and everybody benefits. But it's already happening, folks. Every major indices is near its all-time record high. Yesterday, the Dow closed at 44,371, just 600 and some change off its all-time high of 45,073. Likewise, the NASDAQ, it closed at 20,585, which is just 200 points behind its all-time high. And the S&P 500 similarly closed at 6,260, just 400 points off of its all-time high. So get ready, folks. Get ready for the good old days coming straight at us. You couple the tax relief with regulatory reduction, and if Jerome Powell will get off his butt and do what the president asked, and I now have come to the point where I think that he should. We have been patient. We have been deliberate. We have been cautious, except when Joe Biden was running for president, you gave a half a point that nobody was asking for out of completely left field. What was that about, Mr. Powell? I've kind of been his defender, really. I think that he has, with exception, I think he has managed the U.S. economy brilliantly, in that inflation was a huge problem that was dumped in his lap by Joe Biden, the illegitimate president that we just finally got out of office, that engaged in all this reckless, irrational government spending at the behest of the Democratic Party. But Powell was handed a big carton of lemons, and I think he's made pretty good lemonade out of it. He has managed to tame inflation. It's down from 9% to somewhere just under 3%. And unemployment actually ticked down for the first time since February, just last month. So unemployment went from 4.3 to 4.1, not a huge number, but a good start in the right direction, a trend of 1 month. So let's hope that we can build on that trend and we get under 4% unemployment. Powell comes to the table, tariffs start to kick in, other countries start funding their own defense, taking some of the burden off of us. I believe that President Trump has the plan and will deliver on budget discipline. The Big Beautiful Bill 2 and the Big Beautiful Bill 3 are rumored to be being worked on as we speak, and they will include curtailment of spending. You take that money away from the government and you give it back to the taxpayers. Whoa, watch out. And did I mention fuel is at a very affordable rate compared to where we were under Biden. So all the pieces of the puzzle are coming together. Mr. President, do not let this Epstein thing that you did not create. That's the difference between, let me be clear. There's a difference between Watergate and Epstein. Trump had nothing, and nor did his people have anything to do with Epstein. But just remember, Mr. President, it was not the burglary at the Watergate Hotel that brought Nixon down. It was the cover-up of the burglary at the Watergate Hotel that brought Nixon down. So don't cover it up. You've got to figure out a way to work our way through this in a way that will give transparency to the American people. And on that note, you're listening to The Truth. I'm John Gordon. We are brought to you today by Perfect Circle Renewable Energy. They are an Atlanta-based company that services restaurants. They pick up your waste oil, clean your grease traps, provide all sorts of containment services as well as collection bins. They will also clean your front of the house and back of the house. They've been in business now for 15 years in the metropolitan Atlanta area. They're one of the fastest growing restaurant services business there. Check them out at pcreenergy.com, pcreenergy.com. And they have a 24-hour customer service line. You can call them up, talk to them about your interest. If you're in the restaurant business in Atlanta and you're not using Perfect Circle Renewable Energy, you must like inconsistent service with surly drivers and bad customer service, because that's how Perfect Circle has grown. They have offered wonderful service in the Atlanta metropolitan area. They are one of the larger companies, one of the fastest growing companies. Call them and check them out today for fast, reliable, clean service, pcreenergy.com. We are coming to you today on the John Fredericks Radio Network, as we do every Saturday from noon to 2, and on Sundays we rebroadcast it for people that miss it on Saturdays. But you can also follow us on Getter, Rumble, YouTube, X, and Facebook, where we live stream. And you can also check out all of our past episodes on johngordon.tv. You can also watch us on the CDM Media Press and on their 13 digital platforms, as well as their live stream on Getter and Rumble. So we're very honored to have the association with CDM Press, just like we love our relationship and our friendship with John Fredericks on the John Fredericks Radio Network in 8 cities on 22 AM and FM radio stations. And finally, you can email me. Let me know what you think. If I've got it wrong, the fact is I want to get it right. So email me, johngordontruth@gmail.com. I read every email. I respond to every email. I would love to hear from you. And if I need to adjust the way I'm looking at some of this stuff, by all means, you let me know. You can also let me know in the comments. Right now, we've got several thousand people interacting with us on getter.com. Just come there, hit the live button, look for John Fredericks, and there is the truth. That is the truth. And I'm John Gordon. Now stay tuned, because we've got some great interviews coming up. Dr. Colonel Josh McConkey. What an unbelievable life he has led. He has written a new book called The Weight Behind the Spear. It is targeted at young people who do not enjoy the services of that we did when we were kids. Is that a fair statement?
They've definitely encountered some very new challenges with social media. It's had a lot of detrimental effects on their development, for sure.
But when we were talking before you came on, you were saying that we during COVID, we took people out of school, out of church, out of community, and that it's really had a devastating impact on a legion of young people.
An entire generation.
Have they come back from that?
No, and it's the social issues, the anxiety, the depression, and I've seen a lot of suicide. So the mental health crisis is very real, and it's a direct result from those policy decisions.
That is so sad. What is the antidote? How do we reclaim the past for young people?
We have to get involved. And the best resource in this country, it's people. It's teachers, coaches, volunteers, and families. That's what sets us apart. That's what makes us America. That's what has always made us America for almost 250 years. No amount of social media is going to change that. So we have to get face to face with these kids, coaching, teaching, getting them into volunteer, getting them into different organizations. I need people to step up and engage their communities. And that's my whole ethos of be the weight behind the spear.
So let's detour for a moment and take us through just a 30,000 foot view of your life. Yeah, I mean, we were talking before we started the interview about the journey that you have been on. It is a phenomenal story of family and service. Tell our listeners about it.
Well, I grew up in a very rural town, small town, less than 8,000 people, more cows, than people where I grew up.
Where was that?
Lyons, Nebraska, a very small town.
No. Wow.
And, came from a family of railroaders, an entire lineage. So my great-grandfather, my grandfather, and my father, all railroaders, Milwaukee Railroad, and then they went bankrupt in the 80s. My dad got on with the Burlington Northern Railroad and was moved out to western Nebraska. So just grew up around a lot of blue-collar, hardworking people. Was in athletics. I was a wrestler, which is a great sport to teach accountability, that personal accountability. And went to a college, Chadron State College, small school. If you follow football, if you know who Danny Woodhead is, or Don Beebe, receiver for the Bills. Do you follow football much?
I really am not a football guy. I have to be honest.
And most football fans will recognize those two names.
I can talk politics with you, but football, I'm challenged.
Yeah.
My sons can hang with you, though.
Yeah, there you go. So Danny Woodhead, two-time Harlan Hill Trophy winner. That's the Heisman for Division II. So he's about the most famous coming out of Chadron State. And from there, went to medical school and took a direct commission into the Army, in the Army Guard. I had an ROTC scholarship, but Chadron State was too small of a school and they did not have a program. So I took that direct commission in 2000. And then we all know what happened in September of 2001. 9/11 kicked off and the world changed completely. And we've basically been at war my entire military career. So, it's seen some death and destruction. I served in Iraq in 2007 and needed some time.
Were you a doctor?
As an emergency physician. So I flew medevac. I was medical director for 3 air ambulance companies. It was one general support aviation battalion out of Balad, Bakuba, a few different locations. Al Assad, he was quite busy and very active. It was part of the surge in 2007 when President Bush called up those additional troops. That was me. So, I carried those body bags and took care of those men and women that were laying down their lives. It changed me a lot as a person. And so when I came back to the States, I moved overseas to New Zealand and practiced as a physician in Rotorua, New Zealand, got remarried. My son was born down there. We've been very blessed. I've got 3 kids now and had a lot of life changes since, but got back into the military and the Air Force Reserves, have served as a critical care air transport doctor, as an aerospace medicine, a flight surgeon, and just finished a command tour to Andrews Air Force Base.
My gosh. And what a wonderful life that you have led. And it sounds like one largely grounded in service. Can I ask you, how did it make you feel after you learned that you had been serving in Iraq and that the whole premise was based on basically a lie?
Yeah, I was watching that, there wasn't like just a definitive, like, boom, this is where we knew it was a lie. But I remember very distinctly in 2011, I was with my brother-in-law Andrew. So he served in Iraq as well. My wife's brother, and he served with the combat engineers and saw a lot of death and destruction as well. We were on vacation in Florida, and we were sitting there watching live on CNN in 2011 when Obama made that decision to just pull all the troops out of Iraq. And we watched those last trucks and convoys literally exit Iraq. And we just sat there and chatted with each other. And we saw so many, men and women die for this country. And you ask yourself, like, what was the point? Like, why were we actually there? And I know I was there for the men and women that were serving, and I wanted them to have the best medical care, regardless of the politics, regardless of why we were there. We're there, and I want those men and women to be taken care of and have that best health care. And that's something I take a lot of pride in. I know Andrew was there for the men that he served with, and he saw a lot of his friends die. It was very hard. So you just ask yourself, and you see some continual policy failures from government leaders, spanning multiple, presidential cycles, and just even the politics aside, you're a little bit bitter, but it's what's really motivated me to get involved in politics myself. We need to have some educated, competent, purpose-driven leaders in this country, and I'm going to be a part of that. So we're entering the lieutenant governor race here in North Carolina.
Oh, congratulations! And what party are you affiliated with, if I may?
So Republican Party. I'm a rural, small town kid, very more conservative values. So that's,
okay, good. Well, we can continue the interview then. Well, I think that is a very noble calling. I too have run for public office. I relished it. I did not win. Hopefully, your experience will be different than mine. But I do think it is a noble calling. And one of the benefits that I found from running for office is that it really exposed me to the goodness of humanity. And I knocked on thousands of doors, and people welcomed me into their home. They spoke to me openly and transparently about the challenges that they had in their lives and things they had been through. And I really walked away from the experience learning just how much goodness there really is in the world. And the mainstream media just doesn't tell you that. They just tell you what's wrong with it.
What race did you run for?
Well, I ran for the state Senate in Atlanta. We made a decent showing. We got 42 or 3% of the vote in the primary. And then I ran for for Attorney General of Georgia with President Trump's endorsement in 2022. And in both cases, I just got in way too late. I have fought procrastination my entire life. Actually, in the AG race, I really did start. I started early enough. I sent out feelers to a number of people who I knew and respected, and they all said, "Oh, that's a great idea. Yes, definitely, you should do that. Let me make some calls and I'll get back to you." And then the phone never rang, and I said, "Well, I guess I just decided it wasn't a good idea."
Yeah, I ran a congressional race last year, like 2023, 2024, and got outspent by $12 million. So like, we're getting involved. This is a race for 2028 right now in North Carolina. So we're jumping in now, and we're going to leave no doubt as we come through this, who that top candidate's going to be for the primary.
Who spent $12 million?
Yeah, I was outspent by $12 million.
You were outspent by 12. And what did you spend?
Oh, I spent, it was about $650. And it was a bizarre race where there was just a really wealthy individual that wanted to anoint his daughter as a congresswoman. He spent $12 million. She got to the runoff against Brad Knott, our current congressman. And then she just wasn't a great candidate. So she got to the runoff. Trump got involved and endorsed Brad Knott, and then she just quit.
That's unfortunate.
After $12 million. Unbelievable.
That's very unfortunate for her dad.
Yeah, for me. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and for you. Yeah, absolutely. Well, politics, there's nothing certain in politics. And so, well, anyway, you're running for lieutenant governor. You've written this book, Weight Behind the Spirit. Let's talk about the book. It is a book on leadership, correct? And you're encouraging people to get off the couch and become involved in their communities and mentoring youth. And you also talk about motivational speaking in the book.
Yeah, we're just getting back to those basics. I have a great chapter in there on leadership. There are great points straight from Coach K. So if you follow college basketball, you probably surely know who Coach Krzyzewski is, the Duke basketball coach. I was a Duke professor, and he had come to our residency program. I thought it was kind of more of a gimmick. They roped him into showing up during recruiting season, but it wasn't a gimmick. He literally gave a 2-hour leadership lecture where he just hammered home points on ownership, like in any organization, accountability. He was really big on standards and not rules, because nobody likes the rules, but when you talk about standards, you hold yourself to a higher standard. I know in my squadron, that's how I, made sure that people know that you care, you're very genuine, spending that time, but having ownership in that organization. Everybody has ownership on his teams, whether you're a freshman or a senior or his 2008 Olympic team. You have LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, all these guys making $30 million a year. He held them all to that same standard. And then, just don't micromanage, put people in position to be successful. He had such a great leadership. He just exudes leadership. It was unbelievable.
Well, that's a great story in and of itself. So I've got this notion or an observation that I'd like to run by you.
Sure.
It seems to me, and I've been on this earth a while now, and I've lived through a lot of different periods in our country's evolvement. But it's my sense is that the better educated we have become, and the more affluent our society has become in general, the crazier it has become. Am I just being negative, and am I missing something, or do you think
I
there's
think you're spot on there, in that most Americans. So I've traveled the globe. I've lived overseas. I've served in different combat scenarios and seen some just horrific things that people will do to each other. Americans are very sheltered. The rest of the world is worrying about how they're going to feed their children, how are they going to prevent their family from being mass murdered, raped, just horrific crimes, their children thrown into vehicles, set on fire, and then snipers pick off people that run out there and try to save them. I mean, just horrific, horrible things. So Americans are so sheltered. Their concerns are, do I have the newest generation iPhone, and what kind of car I drive, and how big my house is? But in real life, none of that matters. So when you're serving in combat and you're watching people die and you're carrying those body bags, you realize none of that matters. Nobody cares how big your house is. Nobody cares what kind of car you drive, and nobody cares how much money you make. Do you want to live or do you want to die? And are you there taking care of the people around you? It's all that matters. And those basics. So when you remove a lot of the fundamental worries that mankind has had to worry about in protecting their family for thousands of years now, and it comes down to iPhones and what kind of car I drive, they just kind of devolve emotionally and culturally into just some of the bizarreness that we're seeing right now in American culture. Some of these culture wars. We're moving back in the right direction. I think people have finally had enough of just the insanity, and it's been a wild few years for sure.
Well, when I was a kid, my recollection is that a lot of people took pride, real pride, in where they attended church. My family and I went to Mulberry Methodist Church in Macon, Georgia, and my friends would say, "Oh, we go to Vineville Methodist Church," and other friends would say, "Well, we go to the Baptist Church." And there was discourse about which churches were better and why you went to one church over the other. And now I don't hear people talking about even going to church. I bought a lot in West Palm Beach that had been on the market for 3 years, and I asked the realtor, and I asked myself, why has this lot not been bought in a frenzy of a real estate market? He said, I don't know. He said, this lot. And where have we lost our way? Why is the church not a part of our fabric any longer? Not you and me, but I'm talking about as our society.
Yeah, it's that division, and I feel personally that there is a lot of purpose behind that. You know, the left and some of that, when you talk about this woke ideology, the more you can separate people from actually like the fundamentals of faith and community and family, the easier it is to get people to follow these weird tangents. So, you know, the further we devolve away from faith, and for those that don't have faith, if you legitimately think that you are just king of the world and there's nothing above you and you are beholden to nothing, that kind of explains some of the weirdness that we're seeing right now. Part of having that faith and having that belief, I never would have survived Iraq without my faith. And I talk a lot about the stories with my chaplain, Jim Higgins. He's in Atlanta, actually, just outside of Atlanta, a Methodist pastor, and was our chaplain in Iraq. And I've stayed in touch with him. He came to my Assumption of Command speech in 2022 when I took command. That was very special for me. So, those types of things really help define and get you through difficult moments in your life. For me, like those combat scenarios and seeing all that death and destruction. If you don't have that faith to lean on, that's why you see so much anxiety and depression and suicides. I mean, that's certainly not the only explanation, but there's a large part to play with that. The further you get away from those basics, it's kind of why we're at where we're at.
My own perception is that my generation really screwed it up. I've as a kid, I lived through the Vietnam War, and sex, drugs, and rock and roll was the formula of the day in the pop culture. I was an awkward teenager living in Macon, Georgia, so the closest I got to that was that I drove an ice cream truck to the Macon or the Byron Pop Festival. It was the second largest. Actually, I think it was larger actually than Woodstock. But I drove the truck out to the venue. We'd sell ice cream popsicles, and it was a spectacle. I was 16 years old, and I had to do it on the sly. If my mother had known what I was doing, she would have killed me, I think. Certainly my dad would have taken the keys away. But my point is that in that era, several things happened. One is the Supreme Court ruled that we could no longer pray in school. I think that was a major league setback. We started our school every day with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag and a scripture reading from the Bible. The sex, drugs, and rock and roll, the abandonment of morals became the pop culture. And we just seem to have gotten then to me, one of the final death nails was abolition of the draft. I had a high draft number. I'll be honest with you. It was not, I did not want to go to Vietnam and get shot up, but I was certainly willing to. I considered it to be my duty, but I got a high number and the war was ended. I went off to college, and the next thing you know, the draft was abolished. And I thought that was a good thing. I celebrated the fact that I did not have to worry about going and serving in the armed forces. My brother took a different tack. He went into ROTC, and like yourself, served with distinction. And he was far more disciplined than I am. And I think our whole generation is less disciplined than our fathers and mothers were. So that's sort of the world according to John. I don't know how do we get it back.
That's something we're trying to work on. That's that book is my prescription to help address that problem, try to get this generation back in the right direction. Because I'm sure you're probably getting a lot closer than me, but I do plan on retiring, and I want to hand the keys to these kids.
Closer.
and right now, Right now, they're not ready, and we need them to be ready because America will not be successful unless we can help them be successful. That's our future, and that's really why it's so important.
How's the book doing, and where do we find it?
Yeah, the book has done amazingly well. I've been very fortunate. It exceeded every expectation. It's won several awards, Independent Press Award, Nonfiction Writers Association, and then it did get a nod for a nomination for a Pulitzer Prize, which was amazing. I think it was just the right book at the right time.
Congratulations.
In our nation, and this trying to bring this generation together and to teach them leadership skills and to have them be successful. I think that was a good message. They could bring people together. It's available. We've got an audiobook, an ebook, and the paperback. You can buy it online as well at weightbehindthespear.com. So WEIGHT, weightbehindthespear.com.
Very good. Colonel Dr. Josh McConkey, a physician, a soldier in the Army, and a reservist in the Air Force, an emergency room doctor, an author, and perhaps soon to be Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. Good luck in your race. We wish you well, and thank you so much for coming on The Truth today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, John. It's been a pleasure. Nice to meet you.
Likewise. Have a great rest of your weekend.
Yes, sir. God bless.
Keith Gross is a lawyer, entrepreneur, and has run for public office. He's here with us today to talk about activist judges. Will the Supreme Court put them in their place? Keith Gross, tell us, what do you think?
Let's hope they do, because the president's administration is being hamstrung by nearly 700 district judges who apparently believe they have the authority to stop any sort of executive action from happening. And what we need now is to redraw and strengthen the lines that are between each of the branches of government. That separation of powers seems to be something that's been forgotten over the last handful of decades.
Well, hasn't the Supreme Court, though, ruled pretty definitively that these district judges cannot impose national injunctions as they were pretending to do? They
have made rulings to that effect. Often these rulings take days or weeks to happen. And if you're a president, you get 4 years. Each day is a large percentage of your total ability to get anything done. So the fact that we see this recurring pattern of injunctions and the Supreme Court's not taking more decisive action to discipline the lower court judges and tell them, look, you can't do this, not for 5 minutes, not for 5 days. You just can't do this at all. We're not seeing that sort of full stop.
Well, they're really usurping the power of the presidency, are they not? And, federal judges, they've never received a single vote in their life.
Yeah, I think a lot of us find it very strange.
Appointed them.
Right.
Yeah.
They didn't get any votes. They didn't run for president, but they still want to run the Oval Office from a courtroom, often by interjecting themselves into things that are clearly presidential powers under Article 2 of the Constitution. We used to see more judicial decisions where they'd say, this is just not a justiciable item. This is beyond our jurisdiction and authority. It's an executive branch matter. These days, judges seem more willing to weigh in on these matters, whether they should or not.
Well, Justice Comey Barrett wrote a scathing opinion about the judge that tried to enjoin Trump on one of his executive orders. And so I'm hoping that it is reflective of what the court's pattern will be in the future. I mean, Trump got 77 million votes. I think that should count for something. I'm sure you do too.
Of course. I think we elected a president to run the executive branch, and he should be allowed to do so. Whether it's what the court agrees with or not, they need to stay in their lane. The judicial branch does not control the executive branch.
Well, I mean, it sets up a huge constitutional crisis, does it not? If these district courts are allowed to impose their own bias on the president, the duly elected president of the United States. And so I think the Supreme Court recognizes that and does not want to bring us to a constitutional crisis, and that there is, in fact, a rule of the court that the court will not rule in the case where they do not have the power to enforce their order or that it would likely not be followed.
Yeah, that's certainly the general principle, and we don't want to see a constitutional crisis because if the Supreme Court, fails to intervene with some of these district court judges and their unconstitutional orders, they leave the president in a situation where his only option is to either give up part of the power of the presidency unconstitutionally to the judicial branch and accept a pointless defeat, or to ignore that court's order, which will have the left screaming on the news about a constitutional crisis, without recognizing the fact that to the extent there is a crisis, it would be one created by the judicial branch taking power from the executive branch unconstitutionally. And so fortunately, we have a president pushing back on that.
Well, you've written a book called Dirt Roads to Runways. Tell us about your book. What was your inspiration and what's the theme of the book?
Well, I've spent most of my career building companies. We've scaled multiple companies from the ground up to being national businesses and sold them off to private equity a few times now. And having gone through that, it was eye-opening, to see the government overreach and excess bureaucracy at really every level. I don't meet too many folks who have liberal views who have also run a business, because once you realize that it's really hard to run a business, you have to work hard to earn your money, and the government usually stands in the way rather than helps, you start to understand that the government's not very good at managing our money or their own.
So, so tell us about the book specifically. Like, is it a reflection of your experiences? Is it an anecdotal sort of walk down memory lane for you?
It's all of the above, really. It's a bit of an autobiography, and it walks through growing up in rural North Florida and growing up with a family that worked hard for their money. They farmed, they raised cattle. My mom was a public school teacher. I grew up in a family that didn't have a lot. And so the book really walks through that experience and the common sense knowledge that folks in most of America have, and how that common sense knowledge could be and should be applied in Washington. It walks through some of the experiences I had in business and details some of the hardships and how some of those hardships are relevant in today's economy, but also how we can get back to the freedoms and opportunity that made the American dream possible. Because I've lived the American dream, but I see that dream slipping away every year as government gets more intrusive, as our national debt goes up, as inflation makes it impossible to afford most things for the next generation.
So how have you been successful in scaling businesses? I mean, that takes a lot of cash, does it not? What were your sources for funding?
A lot of folks, they think that there's the adage of it takes money to make money. And I suppose it does, but you can start with very little and just start saving. And that's what we did. The first company that we scaled national started with one small location. It was a couple of pressure washers and a truck. It wasn't a very expensive outfit. And, often we were washing trucks till the wee hours of the morning because the crew didn't show up and we had to do the labor ourselves. So we would do that, and we did it for years. It took nearly 10 years to grow that company from one location into serving nationwide. So it didn't take a lot of money to start, but because we saved virtually everything we earned along the way, we didn't take days off, and we reinvested almost every penny we got back into the business. Over time, that really compounded, and it was a function of giving up satisfaction in the short term in order to achieve long-term goals.
Well, it's really impressive what you've done. So I've been saying for several months now that it is my sense that President Trump is really reconstructing our nation's economy, and mainly from the standpoint of government. He's got new sources of revenue coming from the gold cards, from tariffs, and then the last number I heard is $15 trillion in committed new investment in the United States in tools, plant, and equipment. Then couple that with the big, beautiful bill, which a lot of people don't like because it did not introduce the spending discipline that we had wanted. Yet it did, I believe it will have the effect of expanding our economy because he's reducing taxes on Americans. He's codified the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which should encourage the consumer and build consumer confidence, which is the largest component of our economy. Then if he can come along and truly do impose spending discipline in the next two beautiful bills that are being talked about, it seems to me that he really could be ushering in the golden age. All he needs now is the Fed to cooperate, and it seems to me that this economy is about to catch on fire.
It looks that way to me also. I think we are going to see the Fed cut rates soon. Just all of the indicators related to inflation are trending in the correct direction. There's really no excuse that they haven't already been cut, except for maybe some political activism on their part. But, I'll leave that issue for those that are experts in the economy, I suppose. With respect to the way Trump is reformatting our economy, in many ways, it's a return to the way our economy used to work. Pre-1913, there was no income tax at all. Our government funded itself almost entirely on tariff income. And the income tax, of course, was supposed to be temporary and only apply to a subset of the wealthiest. Naturally, that's not how it worked out. Like all temporary government programs, it became a never-ending, massive thing. So It's nice to see the tariff income happening. It's nice to see the tax rate increase that would have happened stalled and the tax cuts made permanent. I think we are going to see our economy really pick up and move forward. Donald Trump's also doing some important work on foreign trade. For decades, foreign trade's been a major problem that our nation's faced. It's caused a lack of manufacturing capacity and real wage growth for the American middle class. Couple that with inflation, and you've got a disaster that's brewing. So I think Trump's doing about all that any president could do to turn that ship around as quickly as possible. We've got a lot of progress that needs to happen, but he's on the right track.
Yeah. So what is your take on Jerome Powell? Are you a fan or a detractor? Where do you come down on the Fed?
Well, I think the Fed is an odd concept that probably shouldn't exist, at least in the form that it currently exists. I think the people should be in control of their currency, not some quasi-governmental, quasi-private, weird sort of circumstance that the Fed really is. It was designed that way, I think, to prevent political activism, but you put a bunch of liberals who are usually New York elite in charge of our monetary system, and it's no surprise to see that they cut rates when inflation was high right before the Biden election because they wanted to help the Biden campaign. And now, even though inflation's basically dropped off, they don't want to cut it because they're hoping to hurt Trump and make him look bad by causing some economic trouble.
Well, I've espoused a slightly different belief. I have no reason to like or dislike Powell, but personally, I feel like that it was the fiscal policy that really got us into trouble with inflation and the completely irrational spending that Biden engaged in. And so he basically handed the Fed a mix of spaghetti that they had to unravel. Interest rates has traditionally been the way to cure inflation. So I think they almost had to raise interest rates to avoid runaway inflation. And it seems to me that they have tamed it, and they have done so without forcing our economy into a recession. And unemployment in the last report came down from 4.3 to 4.1%. Nobody saw that coming. It's the first drop we've had since February. And so, I mean, I kind of give them high grades. Am I missing something here?
No, I think you're right to give them high grades on the fact that they seem to have pulled off what they called a soft landing. They were able to bring rates into a control territory and stop the inflation to the extent it was caused by rates at all. And certainly that was a contributing factor. So I think that's definitely a tool in their toolbox, and they've used it well for the time they needed to. It seems to me that it's a little past due to cut rates, though, because of the disadvantage the American economy sees when compared with other world economies where their rates are already being cut. You got to remember, it's not just about what's happening here domestically. We're competing on a world stage. So if we disadvantage ourselves with excessive rates compared to our competitors, American businesses have a harder time winning those contracts. And also, I mean, you're correct on your point that so much of the inflation was really a function of government spending. I think rates are probably a minority on that. Most of it is government spending. The Biden administration spending bill was like $7 trillion that got added. That's insane. We shouldn't be spending that much, but it costs a lot to run a government if you want the government to be everything to everyone, which is why I usually advocate for going back to a more constitutional, streamlined federal government that just doesn't do that many things. It should be a very small federal government.
Well, and I think that there is a very pragmatic way of accomplishing that, and that is just to turn over a lot of the government functions to philanthropy, which seem to be able to distribute the funds and do the work a lot more efficiently than government can, and in most cases without the advent of graft and corruption. And so I don't know how you do that, but America already is the most philanthropic country on earth. I don't know, and that's a model that seems to be working. I don't know why we don't take a lot of those government services out of the government and put them in the hands of philanthropists.
I think it comes from well-meaning politicians hoping to score points. They all want to put out a press release saying, we just provided health care to this large population. But that's not the federal government's role. Like you said, that can be handled in a philanthropic fashion.
Score points or score votes. I think they're one and the same. So in your book, Dirt Roads to Runways, what is the metaphor of on runways? What do you what's the point there?
Yeah, I think the idea there was to highlight the fact that I'm a kid that grew up on a country dirt road, living in a trailer, and now I fly my own jet. So if I can live the American dream, anyone can. Say again?
What kind of jet do you fly?
It's a Phenom. It's a relatively small one. It's a Phenom 100. It's a twin-engine, 6-seat jet. So it cruises at about 41,000 feet, but it's a quick way to get places.
I have flown the Phenom, and I have an Eclipse jet, which is a very similar jet in terms of performance and speed and altitude, but it burns a whole lot less fuel than yours does.
Yeah.
So I flew it here from Atlanta last night, and I marvel at the air route traffic control system. There were storms all the way up and down the west coast of Florida, and we just flat out threaded the needle when I was coming into Pompano. So safe flight, happy landing, and I, like yourself, flying has been a passion of mine since I was 15, and it is one of the things that I truly do enjoy.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, and safe flying and good landings to you too.
Same to you, and thank you for coming on. How's the book doing, and where do we find it?
So the book, you can find it anywhere books are sold, barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com. It's also an audiobook on Audible. And the book's doing great. You know, it's priced really low. I think the lowest they would let us set it on Amazon is 99 cents. It's not about selling books. It's about getting the message out there and energizing the next generation.
Well, thank you for doing that. And that's valuable work. Keith Gross, entrepreneur, author, and a jet pilot. Thank you for being on The Truth today, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks so much. You too.
We are back with Dennis Kneale, celebrated author of The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk. He has his own podcast on the Ricochet Network called What's Bugging Me, and he has been on The Truth just recently. Welcome back, Dennis.
Great to see you. It's a glorious day here in Brooklyn. I hope you're doing well.
We are in Atlanta, Georgia today, and it has been beautiful weather, a lot cooler than West Palm Beach, where it is hot and muggy, but we'll be back there later this weekend. Dennis, is Elon Musk looking like a genius to you today?
He sure isn't looking like a genius lately. He's looking instead like an angry, put upon, disrespected malcontent. And I'm sorry to see it. And the thing about it is, Elon Musk is right on the facts for why he is upset. He risked his life, got death threats. His personal net worth fell by more than $100 billion because he dared to go after the government and try to cut wasteful spending. He dared to support Donald Trump. And then he manages to cut $1.75 trillion over 10 years. Who's done that in the last 30 or 40 years in government? No one. And yet the new big, beautiful bill would add upwards of maybe $3 trillion in debt over those same 10 years. You're wiping out what he did. But so it's good to be right on the facts. He's got an important point, but then he turns it into personal attacks on the president. And that is beyond the pale. Shame on him for doing it. And suddenly you lose the argument on the facts because of style points. And style counts for so much these days. And John, I say this as a person who in my career offended a number of people in various vociferous fights in which I was right on the facts, damn it. But as soon as I yelled and I hurt someone's feelings, then I'm wrong. And this is what Elon is facing.
I think you have summed it up brilliantly. I do happen to have a little personal insight into the president. I've been there and done that, and I can tell you that when I first met him, he was one of the most charismatic, engaging, and delightful people I've ever been with,
Yeah.
and I relished every moment of it. I've actually had several encounters with him, two of which were in person with just he and I and Susie Wiles, and they lasted for hours. And I felt like that we got to know each other very well and had a perfectly symbiotic relationship until I lost my election in Georgia, which I waged purely and simply to defend him and our Constitution, because I felt that the constitutional officers of Georgia had failed us. I felt the media was lying. I don't feel the media was lying. I know they were lying because I had seen the evidence of the 2020 election and I presented it to the media. They chose not to look at it and look the other way, and then continued this false narrative that Trump was delivering a false narrative. They call it the big lie. I call them the biggest lie. So, and then the courts failed us. So I won't rehash all of that, but just to say that once the election was over and I did not win, I was yesterday's news as far as Trump was concerned. Now, I know that he has done that to other people. I know factually and firsthand that he has done that to a variety of people. He has left a scorched earth of people that he has used and then brushed them aside when they're no longer value. And I don't think that that's totally different from what Musk has experienced. Now, that's the case against Trump. I'll tell you the case against Musk. He was not elected president of the United States, and he had a lot to do with getting Trump elected, but that does not give him the right, I don't think, to be inside the administration and then critical of the leader. Go behind closed doors, pound the table, throw a temper tantrum, and, figure out how to meet somewhere in the middle. But I think the real fatal error that Musk has made is that I think Trump's strategy is a long game. And it is my belief that I think has been validated in the last couple of days by Senator Tommy Tuberville, that he got the big, beautiful bill passed and got all the tax breaks codified, and then gave us some new tax relief. And now he is going to come behind that, and according to Tuberville, present as many as 2 new big, beautiful bills that will cut spending. Musk left too soon and grew too impatient, I think.
You can make it up in post-op. You can make it up in, what is that phrase from television? We'll make it up in post. Well, a couple of things. Let me unpack a few things here, John, if I may. John Gordon, truth here. First, if I were in your shoes, would try to focus on how fantastic it is that I had one of the most incredible, great presidents of all time on my side when I ran for office. Instead of lamenting that after I lost and no longer running for office, he left me behind. That is something we all do. We have contacts with people who are working on stuff, and then we move on to other things, right? So let us instead feel incredibly grateful that you had that time. I've spent that time with Trump twice.
I have resolved it
That's the first
exactly the way you described it. And let's take it one step further. I am not so self-consumed that I am worried about poor little old me. I am more worried about the country. And I give Trump a perfect score, a 100% on the test.
Oh,
so far, 6 months into his second.
Amazing. We've never seen anything like it, have we? I mean, my gosh. And the poor media, which have decided to take up the opposition with Democrats, they have no choice. But sometimes I saw a 6-minute op-ed on CNN a week or two ago where the guy's admitting all of these triumphs. It's been incredible. Now, as for Elon Musk, I'd so much like your point that, you know what, you praise in public and you criticize in private.
That's
And
wonderful.
I think it was even okay for Elon Musk to criticize the bill in public when you're criticizing the bill. Where he went wrong is when he then started on the personal attacks against Trump.
Okay, so I've thought about that too. What if they are true?
What if which things are true?
The personal attacks.
These two men need each other. These two men are allies. You don't air that personal stuff out there. You don't mention the Epstein list. That's ridiculous.
I'm just saying, between you and me and our listeners, I really don't believe that Trump's on the list. Did he know Epstein? Absolutely.
Well, there is no list now. To hear the FBI telling all the people who are insisting there was, no, there's no list. There's no list. But no, if
you believe that, I've got some property in South Florida I want to show you.
If Trump were truly implicated, it would have leaked long ago to destroy his 2016 campaign and his 2020 campaign. 100%. And in fact, Julian Assange, the big leaker with WikiLeaks, was once asked, how come you don't go after Trump? He says, we did. There's nothing there. The guy's been paranoid for years and germ-phobic, and he's been worried that someone's setting him up for years and years. And so,
and he's been running for president for years and years. If you go back and watch the Oprah Winfrey interview, that was, I don't know what year it was, but it was like 20 years ago.
Oh shoot! He did one in the 80s with Rona Barrett. Rona Barrett for a pilot that never aired. But the thing that struck me about it was that he was espousing the very same views in the 1980s that he is still espousing today about unfair trade around the world, about how we can't get into their markets, but we openly let them into ours. And was amazed at how consistent he was. But back to Elon, since I'm shilling my book, The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk, but I think the only, in his defense, John, as he's overreacting and reacting badly out of true pain and insult, and feels like, what was this all for? And he went into Washington utterly naive in the ways of politics. And he doesn't understand that the sad duty of politics is to bring justice to a sinful world. That's a line from this philosopher, Reinhold Niebuhr, who was a mentor intellectually for Jimmy Carter. And Jimmy, the reborn Baptist, came into office and realized he was going to have to commit some sins to get good things done. And Elon Musk lives in a world where the first principles, it's called, you boil everything down to its bare essence and get down to that. That's not the way politics works in Washington. And you point out, yes, they can now pass farther bills that do establish more cuts. This ain't over. And Elon Musk missed out.
I think so too. I do also think that it goes beyond just Trump and Elon. Did you see the first cabinet meeting that Elon attended?
Yes, I did.
I feel like I'm pretty good at reading people.
Yeah.
And what I perceived in that room in real time while I was watching it was that they don't cotton to this guy.
No, they are jealous as hell. None of them have a son frolicking on the lawn with the president of the United States. None of them have an invitation to Mar-a-Lago to be hanging out with the president at parties. But Elon Musk did, because he was a billionaire 100 times over versus Trump's wealth. And Trump truly admires that. Trump admires wealth creation and self-made people. And Elon is that in spades. And so, look at Treasury Secretary Bessent, okay? The other day, he's talking, was it Maria Bartiromo? He was talking to someone on air, and he says, Elon is an expert on rocket ships, but leave the finances to me. And it turns out these guys got in a shoving match privately, and he called Elon a fraud, and he's criticizing him because he wasn't able to cut the budget. But you know what, Scott Bessent, what the hell have you done to cut the budget? You're a fantastic Treasury Secretary, but you're jealous of Elon's closeness to the president, and you hope to drive a wedge between them, and so did the media, and now they have succeeded. But I blame this on Elon.
I think Elon shares 90% of the fault. I think, I've been, as we talked about, I've been in Musk's shoes, although to a much, much, much lesser degree. But I put 3 months of my life, I put 2 years and 3 months into election integrity because of 2020. And then I put $1 million of my savings into my race. And I traveled the entire state of Georgia for 2.5 months. I really worked hard. I would have thought that I would have at least gotten a little bit of a, hey, thanks for trying. It's not about me. I'm not crying foul about me. I'm just saying I can empathize with the way that Musk feels because he put $250 million into his race, into Trump's race, and a month of his life and all the other things that you acknowledged. I get the hurt that he experienced. That does not give him license to go, as you very accurately point out, to be critical of the president when he's trying to pass one of the biggest, most complicated and significant bills that the Congress has ever passed. I don't think that's an overstatement. Yeah. So that was the error that he made. But I think he feels so passionately about controlling this out of control federal spending. And, do you watch the All In podcast by any chance?
I am a big fan, and I know one of those guys. I've had a past clash with him many years ago, which I still prize and still relish having had. Those are four of the smartest guys in business, man.
Are brilliant. But I watched them last week, and they explained that we don't have just a federal government budget crisis. We have in the United States, a global credit crisis because the federal government is steeply in debt. State governments, for the most part, are steeply in debt. Pension funds, state-run teacher pension funds, are in debt. Municipalities are in debt. Authorities are in debt. People are in debt at record numbers, and corporate debt is at record highs. We have the potential for a colossal financial crisis like we've never seen before if the adults don't show up in the room.
Right.
And I have to tell you, I'm as guilty as the other people that we've just talked about because I'm building a house based on borrowing the money from myself.
So a couple things on this, if I can get in here. Otherwise, I'm going to forget what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
So let me jump in here, and don't forget the Social Security and Medicare. Right. They also are in huge debt, and they don't have enough to cover their obligations. Some years ago, Mark Levin put a book out, Plunder and Deceit. I read that, and I think at that time, our uncovered liabilities were something like $200 trillion. And I'm sure it's higher now. I'm sure it's 250 or 300 trillion. So yeah, that's all a big concern. But understand this. Understand that when a world debt crisis happens, when suddenly markets start to plunge because they are afraid that the U.S. will default, when this big crisis happens next, if it ever happens, all of the money in the rest of the world will flood into the United States as the safest place in a terrible crisis, as the one place that maybe has a chance of paying back its bills. So we will get stronger, not weaker, in the next crisis, despite all of our debt.
Look, I'm an optimist. I'm a salesman. You got to be optimistic if you're a salesman. My high school principal told me, he said, I don't worry about you. They had to burn the building down to get me out of there, by the way. But he said, and he was trying to build my confidence up as a struggling adolescent who did not like high school. He said, I don't worry about you, Gordon. He said, you can sell ice to Eskimos. You're going to do just fine. I've carried that 10-second conversation with me my entire life. My point is, we're going to be okay, I believe. But foreign investment in the United States has been on a steep decline for the last 10 years. So I hope that what you're saying is true, but I don't think that it's an absolute guarantee. And I think that it is a function of our credit worthiness, and the value of our currency has been diminished because of the debt. So I think that's where Elon is coming from. That's all I'm trying to say. Sure. And I think in his mind, that value statement surpasses his affinity and love for Trump. And I think he is placing the priority there. And I think he believes that the system is broken, that this two-party system, which has for the last 30 years depended on buying votes to stay in power, is going to come crumbling down around them. And I share his concern.
But he is in danger of making himself a pariah. Elon Musk is confusing two things. He is popular with MAGA, not because he's Elon Musk. He's popular with MAGA because he helped their hero get elected.
That's right.
But once he takes away his support, once he starts to personally attack the president, he loses MAGA. At the same time, he's hated by the Democrats, the liberals, and the media for having helped Trump get elected, having played such a decisive role in Trump's election. They're not going to suddenly re-embrace him because, oh, he's criticizing the big, beautiful bill. So he's going to be in the middle, standing there naked and alone, not able to attract either. When he stood on those stages at political rallies for Trump, raising his fists, Elon Musk did, and his T-shirt, rising up to expose his belly, he was so happy. He's motivated by, like all of us, wanting to be loved, and he loved that. But now he's thinking that was all because of who he is, and it's not. He was loved because of his support for who Trump is.
Dennis, you nailed it. No, there is no question about it. Can they make amends? Do you think they can somehow rebuild the bridge?
Yes, of course they can, for a couple reasons. First, that old saying we discussed before, I think, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And these men still are hated by the same people. So that's one reason. Second, they need each other to get stuff done. And third, Elon Musk especially needs Trump more than Trump needs Musk. Under the Biden administration, Elon Musk and his companies were under investigation by government on 20 different fronts. Ridiculous, some of these investigations. And he can't have government doing everything it can to thwart what he's trying to do when the guy is definitely working hard to make the world a better, more efficient place.
I truly believe that Musk's heart is in the right place. I don't think that he's trying to do any of this because of his own ambition. I think that starting a third party does really appeal to him. I mean, if you're going to go to Mars, how much effort does it take to build a third party? Trump says he thinks it's ridiculous. If you remember the days of Ross Perot, it's really not ridiculous. And
no, it is ridiculous. It's entirely ridiculous.
Ask here for a second.
Ask Elon Musk's AI engine. Does this hurt Republicans worse? And it says, yes, it's going to help Democrats get elected.
Well, look. Perot almost got elected president of the United States. He was so far ahead of Clinton and Bush that he was going to walk into the White House, and then he was blackmailed. Somebody brought him inappropriate pictures of his daughter, and he decided that being president wasn't as important as he thought it was. So he withdrew, if you remember. He got out of the race. And then after a month or so, he had second thoughts about it, and he jumped back in, and it was just too late. My point is, I think that somebody that is an attractive, strong third-party candidate could absolutely be elected president of the United States. And I think there is a big part of our country in the middle. The fringes of both parties are what give politics a bad name. You take Mondami out of the Democratic Party and pick your poison in the Republican Party and take them out of the equation, you've got a big middle there that feels disenfranchised. Trump was the savior. Maybe he still is. The brand has been tarnished a bit. And I think that he can cure it in short order by bringing budget discipline to the equation now. I think Musk will look like an idiot when that comes to light.
Well, hang on a minute here, man. You just said something that stunned me.
Yes.
Were you saying that? Which brand were you saying has been tarnished a bit? The Trump brand or the?
Yeah, I think Trump has definitely suffered some setbacks.
What do you mean, John? Aren't we looking at, with great delight, the most successful first 6 months of any presidency probably in history? Victory after victory, what Trump has done. Yes. My gosh, it's extraordinary. So where's the tarnishing of the brand, baby?
people like you and me that study this stuff, that know it inside and out. I think we have superior knowledge to the average man or woman on the street who are worried about their job or their daughter or their son or all the things that consume us as living on this planet that don't cover it as much as you and I do. And I think that when Ron Johnson doesn't want to vote for the bill, he capitulated at the end. Rand Paul, and even Lisa Murkowski, or Susan Collins, I think, actually voted against it. I think they are representing a big part of our populace that do want serious budget reform.
See, I don't think they're doing that at all. I think they are wanting to be the holdout and be on the spotlight for attention and wanting to pander to their media sources or whatever. I don't think they're voting as much as trying to do the right thing at all. Otherwise, why would some of them change at the very last minute?
You can't say that about Rand Paul, whose dad served in Congress for decades.
Oh, I can say that about Rand Paul. I think Rand Paul
for years.
Look at Rand Paul's haircut. Look at Rand Paul's haircut and the way he wears his hair, those curly locks, okay? To know that there's a vanity to this man, it drives him crazy that Trump has found such success. It drives him crazy that Elon had such inside thing. I think Rand Paul is motivated by hoping to run for president someday, mainly.
Look,
I don't see how he did helped at all.
They're all trying to run for something. Rand Paul has been consistent through 3 administrations of wanting less government, less spending. And I think he's absolutely right. His hair is curly because he was born that way. Yeah. And I've spent time with Rand Paul. I don't know him well. We're not on speed dial, but I find him to be a very genuine, down to earth guy. So we agree on so much. We'll have to go to neutral corners on Rand Paul. But I do think there's that great silent majority that Nixon spoke of that is still here, that is really concerned about the out of control recklessness of the federal government. I think they're concerned about the Epstein files. I think they're concerned about Building 7. I think they're concerned about JFK, RFK, and MLK. And I'm one of those people. I think this federal government is rotten to its core, and I want to see meaningful reform. And if I have to jump off a cliff and ride Elon Musk back to do it, I would be willing to do so if we can reclaim the moral high ground in this country, which is what I hope to achieve. Hope our country can achieve.
Yes. And if Elon instead would focus his efforts on destroying the Democrats and their arguments and helping continue to reform the Republican Party, because that litany of opinions and the people you're talking about, that's MAGA, baby. And they're already changing the Republican Party from a party of bankers in suspenders and white collar shirts into a party of people in flannel shirts who work with their hands a lot of the times. And I think that's a wonderful thing. But to derail that success and to then start a whole new party is the equivalent, as my 87-year-old mother put me, well, it sounds like Elon is a child. He's just picking up his marbles and going home. Dude, you are hurting one of the best presidents we've had in 100 years. You are, and he has remade this party. Help him further remake it. Don't become a rival to it. Shame on him.
Okay, so you and we're just having a conversation here. I like you, Dennis, and I think you like me too. And we're just analyzing this, getting down into the weeds. But look, I'm not a lawyer. I don't care to operate as a federal government. Yeah. And you and I are part of that, whether we want to be or not. And to remain silent on it, I think makes us complicit. I know for 100% certainty that Lyndon Baines Johnson and Allen Dulles killed Kennedy. I think their names need to be ripped off the buildings and they need to be tried in memoriam. And their legacy needs to reflect the dastardly deed that they did. I don't think it's cool that our federal government continues to propagate the lie that Oswald killed Kennedy. It's just a big fat lie. It makes me mad.
I'm so glad you bring this up, John. I was just arguing with my producer at Ricochet about this Epstein story.
Are you with somebody else besides me?
Oh, yeah. And because he's just saying, it just shows you, these big talkers, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Don Bongino, your big talkers outside the government. Suddenly you get inside and you realize, so there's no there. But wait a minute. What do we think are the chances that there's no there? That's what the federal government is now arguing. Oh, there is no client list. Well, there may not have been literally one list with the clients on it, but you have enough to be able to put together a bunch of names of who went to the island the most times. You have enough to show whether there was intelligence involved. And the thing I kept asking is, well, if there's nothing there, then what was Epstein even doing this for?
No, I got a better one for you. If there's no there, why is Ghislaine Maxwell in prison and behind?
I know.
Hello.
In fact, she should ask for a new trial or for a pardon.
There's nothing that happened.
Yes, I know.
Ah.
And why is this? Why among conservatives has this Epstein story years later taken so hold? I mean, is it because they're convinced, conservatives are, that most of the people on any list are liberal Democrats? Is that why? Is it a partisan thing? Is it because they suspect that Democrats are part of this child pedo ring or something that you sometimes see? Why has this become such a galvanizing issue, John?
I don't know. And I think the answer to your question does lie within those files. And I have no expectation that we'll ever get to see them. I think whatever it is so damning to our federal government that it would cause a revolt. That's my belief.
Yeah.
I think that we were complicit in it. And you just look at all the lives that have been ruined. And
now, can I just take the other side? Wait a minute. Let me take the other side of this trade for a minute, okay?
Okay.
I know that the women who went through this, it was a terrible thing. And I saw some video from a woman who came out and said, I've been in a prison for 27 years or something, blah, 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 blah. And I just want to say, bull. And if you were molested or if you were, a child prostitute, if you were whatever, long, long ago, you are the person who decides, right? Whether you let that destroy the rest of your life. You could instead learn from it. You could crusade, as this woman's doing in public, for the rights of women. You could do lots of other things. You don't have to feel like your life is destroyed. We cannot change the bad things that happen in our lives. We cannot change them. We can change and we can shape how we choose to interpret them and respond to them and see them. And if a person chooses to let their life be destroyed by this, and so be it. But otherwise, it doesn't have to be that way. Stop making yourself a victim. Stop presenting yourself as a victim. Start realizing that you are a hero and a survivor, and now you're speaking out. It's a totally different feel for the same exact old event.
I appreciate the point that you were making. I have dealt with a lot of adversity in my life. When I was young, I used to think that I was the only person who had an alcoholic for a parent. But when I got to be an adult, I realized that a lot of my self-destructive behavior related to the fact that I was an adult child of an alcoholic. So I went and got the books and I read and I went and got therapy and I got help. And today I am a much better person for having had that experience than I would have been without it. But let me tell you, I don't think that's the same as being raped or molested as a child. And I'm not sure that you can just flip a switch and say, oh, I'm going to choose to be okay.
Yes, you can. Of course you can. The mind is an incredibly powerful thing.
And if you're lucky and you can afford it, but I think you're being pretty harsh on the victims with that statement, frankly, Dennis. I don't think.
I just want to encourage them to know that they're okay and they're strong.
I'm down with it.
Rather than just saying that their lives were destroyed 30 years ago. I mean, give me a break.
No desire to be disrespectful to you, but you sound a little like Alfred E. Newman saying, "What? Me worry?"
It's great advice.
Or the other guy saying, "Oh, I'm clinically depressed. I'll just be happy." It doesn't work that way.
It actually does. And cognitive behavioral therapy has shown in studies to be every bit as effective as antidepressants and to basically get people to feel better about life in about 24 appointments. The mind is incredibly powerful. Look, on the morning I turned 14 years old, the morning of my 14th birthday at 5 o'clock in the morning, my drunk alcoholic father, newly divorced, was crossing Kendall Drive in South Miami. He was hit by a car and died suddenly on impact. Now, I spent years trying to adjust to that. Years.
Well,
and how, and then I wrote an op-ed on the 50th anniversary of his death, July 24th. On the 50th anniversary, I wrote an op-ed that the Journal published. And I said, today we hear a lot of things about how they're destroying the government. They're destroying freedom of the press. They're destroying women's sports. And I said, nothing can destroy us unless we let it.
I
just want to argue in favor of standing up and being strong instead of describing yourself as a victim all the time.
Your prescription is very well taken. You are 100% right. But let me submit to you, and I don't really know your background or your social status at the age of, did you say 14?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Lower middle class, school teacher mom, mechanic father.
My mom survived, but I did spend Christmas Day when I was 14 in the hospital with her after she had attempted to take her own life.
Oh, that's rough.
You and I have a lot of similarities, but she lived. And I happen to actually have loved my mother because she was one of the sweetest, kindest, loving, nurturing mothers you could have, who also happened to suffer from a disease called alcoholism. I have a lot of empathy for what she went through as a child. She lost her mother when she was 14 through natural causes. But so, I fully appreciate where you're coming from. I think that what we've experienced and what these young girls have experienced may be different on one hand. And also, the fact of the matter is, I had the resources to go get help. I could afford to go get counseling. I think most people in America can get counseling today if they need it and want it and are willing to go to the public health department or some sort of public health outlet. Counseling is readily available to indigents. But I'm just not willing to say, get over it and move on. I am willing to say, go get help, lift yourself up. But this Epstein thing has taken a great toll on so many people. And you look at the carnage that it has caused. And I'm not defending any of them, but Prince Andrew, the gal who committed suicide in Australia 2 months ago, Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein himself. And so I don't have a lot of empathy for them except for the victim. But what about the people that orchestrated it? What if this was a honeypot to suck people in so they could videotape them doing bad things and then control them? That's what I want to get to the bottom of.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
I want to condemn.
And also, I think that especially for the victims of this and these young girls who were shaped by this, I think they especially are owed a full disclosure and a fuller explanation of what the hell was going on. I find it so hard to believe that this was purely Epstein on his own, having his jollies and making party films. There's something more going on here, and I wish the government would do more to convince us than simply saying, okay, show's over, move along. So
what I have been advocating for the last 3 years on this program is that we have a cleansing in America. This is a tough one to pull off. But if we really care, I think it could be done. And I think that we've got to go and say, we're going to shine light. It's going to be painful, but it's going to be the greatest disinfectant that we can have. We're going to grant immunity to every member of Congress who has been blackmailed or compromised.
Or Supreme Court justice.
Or Supreme Court justices. You just all come in and confess your sins, brother.
Yeah, what is that? Truth and Reconciliation Commission type of thing.
That's it.
Yeah.
And we somehow get it out. We deal with it, put it in our nation's past, and we reclaim the moral high ground that will allow us to lead a world that is desperate.
Now,
moral leadership.
I do think the spook community, the CIA in particular, they probably don't want the details of any honeypot operation coming out, because this is a technique that they use ongoing to try to get influence over people, and they probably don't want us to inspect.
And it is wrong.
Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter is we are all human, and given the right time and place and an appropriate amount of alcohol, we are probably subject to being tempted.
Sure.
And to be then sucked in and recorded and then used against you so you can be controlled. I just think one of these people from Congress, like, you know what David Letterman did? You remember when he went on national television and said, I have sinned. I am being blackmailed because I had a relationship with an intern, and I am sorry, but I am announcing it on national television.
He got out in front of it.
You're not going to blackmail me.
He pulled a Sipowicz.
And
nice.
He kept his chair on the Late Show. How?
Well, someone just did that recently too. Someone just took the hit on that. And that, by the way, I sometimes give crisis advice to CEOs or to people, and getting out in front of it, pulling the Sipowicz defense name for Detective Sipowicz and NYPD Blue. Hey, you better get out in front of this. Is great advice for anyone facing some kind of scandal. It utterly neutralizes the threat of blackmail. And the CIA would lose some leverage if that realization came out.
Are you kidding me? They would lose a lot of leverage, but worse, they would lose face. And I happen to think that the CIA fulfills a very important, dangerous, heroic, patriotic job for our country. Those people put themselves in the line of danger every single day that they go to work. And I have a great amount of respect and appreciation for them. That does not, however, give them a license to go scorched earth, ruining people's lives. And a lot of it is not for the protection of our country, but a satisfaction of their own ego or lust for power.
And protection of the deep state.
You know, I think that they probably internalized this, that they're doing it for the good of the country. And so that justifies all of the means. But justify killing Kennedy for me, okay? Somebody justify how they rationalize killing one of the most popularly elected, democratically elected presidents in our nation's history. I don't think that you can come up with a rationalization for it other than that LBJ hated Kennedy. Bobby Kennedy hated LBJ. Hoover hated everybody. He was strictly motivated by power. He invented this means, as far as I know. He was the first person that we became aware of who actually kept a list and a file of dirt on people that he wanted to control. Yes. And so maybe we can't change it. Maybe I'm just living in la la land and it can't happen. But I believe this country is founded on Judeo-Christian beliefs. And I think the people of this country have a great spirit about them. I also think that redemption is a value that we hold sacred. And if these people would come forward and say, look, let me tell you what's been going on. I have made a bad mistake in my life and they are blackmailing me every day. And I am determined to get free of the noose they have put me in. And hopefully my wife or my spouse will stay with me by confessing my sins, but I'm not going to be blackmailed anymore.
Yeah, that would be a nice thing to see. Unfortunately, so far we aren't seeing it. I am far more interested, though, rather versus the JFK assassination. And let's remember, RFK Jr. came out publicly and said, the CIA assassinated my uncle. He just said it on the record less than a year ago, I think. Okay. But I want to know about Trump, this new FBI investigation of Comey at the FBI and Brennan, and looking at Russiagate and how Obama authorized it and how Hillary's campaign spent $6 million to fabricate a bogus Steele dossier. And these guys, this was a coup. And I really want to know about those two apparently random assassination attempts. And I want to know who that first shooter was talking to on his cell phone right before firing. When will that come out? Are we gonna have to wait 75 years on that?
But I saw Trump in an interview the other day, and he said, well, my people tell me that everything is all right, that they got the guy and that's it. Can he be that naive? I mean,
or is he sandbagging?
I think he's sandbagging. I think he's like holding the cards right here. He's saying what they want to hear, but he knows that Matthew Crooks was probably not the assassin. Have you gone down the rabbit hole with Maxwell Urich?
I think I have, where there was someone on an oil water tower or something, a second shooter maybe.
Maxwell Urich is a guy who has shown he Lord, it's a long conversation. He drove a white van from Mesa, Arizona to Butler, Pennsylvania. Immediately after the attempted assassination, we saw on national television that van being towed away.
I remember.
It was announced that it had explosives in it. Maxwell Urich's father owns Urich Ammunitions in Mesa, Arizona, and is believed to have sold arms to third world countries. Maxwell Urich was in the Ukraine. He is believed to have had an association with Ralph, the West Palm Beach would-be assassin. Urich also was in Portland, Atlanta, DC, in the 2019 riots. He was he believed to have had an association with the CIA.
Unbelievable.
Crooks had people visiting him from Gallery Place in Washington. We know that from breadcrumbs that were left by his cell phone. And we know that he went to a shooting range in Butler preceding the July the 13th, where he was practicing his, what do you call it? Marksmanship. And every time that he signed in, somebody else signed in at the same time, but their name is redacted.
Now, John, why is it that I have not read this in any investigative report, in any mainstream media outlet? This is incredible. These things, and then we also know, remember that CNN, which had never covered a Trump rally in the 2024 campaign, decided to have live cameras there for that rally in Pennsylvania, where the assassination attempt then unfolded.
Dr. Jill was 60 miles away in Pittsburgh, and a lot of President Trump's service detail was pulled out of Butler and sent to Pittsburgh to protect Dr. Jill, who ain't no doctor. And
I remember reading that. Right. And see, the media are complicit. No one's putting this together and looking at it. You've just laid out just an amazing series of facts that I'll bet you 90% of Americans don't even know.
Well, I'm trying to spread the word, and I'm glad I got your interest. I'll send you a video that is my source information for it, one of the sources for it. And Roger Stone, also, who was on the program a couple of weeks ago, was also very knowledgeable about Maxwell Urich and was up to speed on it. I hope that President Trump is, and I hope that people in the FBI are actually choosing to look at it, and that we will get the truth. Dennis Kneale, you're a great American, and I have so enjoyed talking to you. I'm so glad that I've gotten to know you better, because it seems that we have some of the same history in our background. And I really appreciate you sharing it with us. And I've shared more today than I have about my past, but it's therapeutic for me to do so. And
the truth will set us free, right? The more transparency about things, I think, the better. Except if you're thinking your wife looks fat, I'd keep that to ourselves.
If you have met my wife, you would know that I married this girl. I loved her at first sight. I still love her today. I tied the knot, and her mother came up to me a month later and said, "John, I am worried about Helen. She looks so thin." I said, "Joyce, she was thin when I met her. She was thin when I married her, and she is thin today. And she was thin on your watch. She's thin on my watch, and she's probably going to be thin the day that she dies." She wakes up at 5. She immediately goes for a 3-mile walk. She finishes the day with a 2-mile walk with our dogs, and then keeps going until she can't go anymore. She's just wired with that kind of a metabolism.
That's great.
He's lucky. Thank you, Dennis Kneale. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Please come back.
I loved it. More to talk about. I'm dying to come back, man. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
And I'll see you, I hope, in South Florida on your next visit. That's Absolutely. The truth. We've told you the truth. I'm John Gordon. Stay with us. We'll be right back.